Or are you mute like your worthless life? And though his words were like daggers, Clara stood still, her trembling hands hiding her courage that was beginning to rise from within, and then, in a voice soft yet firm, she whispered words that froze every heartbeat in the room. Sir, you say no one shuts you up, but sometimes silence itself shuts a man louder than words ever could, and maybe you do not see it, but every time you roar, people don't admire you, they only endure you, they nod not. Because you are right, but because they fear your voice more than they value your wisdom. And when fear is the only reason people listen, then truly, sir, you are already shut up without knowing it. Her words fell like a drop of water on fire, sizzling against Raymond's pride, and though he wanted to explode with rage, something in her tone pierced his armor, something about the truth that everyone in the room secretly carried but never dared to say, and in that moment, the mighty Raymond Steele, the man who believed no one could silence him, found his throat dry and his words gone, his face flushed, his heart trembling, and his mind spinning with the realization that perhaps for the first time in decades, a maid had spoken the truth that his millions could never buy, a truth that echoed louder than his roar, and as he sat there, speechless, his guests watched in awe, some with hidden smiles, others with respect for the courage Clara had shown, and though the dinner continued with forced normalcy, inside Raymond something had cracked, something had shifted, and he could no longer laugh as loudly as before, no longer mock as easily, for Clara's words had entered his mind like a seed waiting to grow into a forest of reflection, a seed that would continue to haunt him through the night, making him realize that money could buy voices, but it could never buy respect, and while he tossed and turned in his silk sheets that night, the echo of Clara's words repeated in his ears, and though he wanted to shout, nothing came out, for indeed, for the first time in his life, the millionaire who roared that no one could shut him up had been shut up by the quietest voice in his own house. And dear viewer, this is only the beginning of Raymond's journey, so if you want to see what happens when pride collapses and truth rises, make sure you subscribe now and don't miss chapter 2 of this life-changing story, because what Clara reveals next will not only silence a millionaire but will inspire millions around the world. The grand mansion of Raymond Steele, one of the richest and most feared millionaires in the city, stood tall with its towering pillars, marble floors, and glittering chandeliers that seemed to scream wealth and power, but inside that very house, where silence was often mistaken for respect, there was a storm of arrogance brewing every day, a storm that revolved around the master of the house himself, Raymond, a man whose booming voice could silence an entire room of politicians, businessmen, and servants alike, for Raymond believed that money gave him the right to speak endlessly, to command without question, to roar without resistance, and to remind everyone in his presence that he was the one no one could dare to shut up. He was a self-made millionaire, having risen from the slums with grit and cunning, but over the years his humility had evaporated and pride had grown like a thorny crown upon his head, and now he was feared more than he was respected, until one fateful evening when the simplest of people, the quiet maid named Clara, would plant a seed of truth in his heart that would leave him speechless forever. It began on a stormy Thursday night when Raymond had invited a circle of investors, ministers, and powerful personalities to his home for dinner, and as the wine poured and the courses of rich food arrived, Raymond spoke louder than anyone else at the table, boasting about his achievements, reminding people of their failures, laughing at those who hesitated to agree, and silencing anyone who tried to interrupt him with his famous growl, "And no one shuts me up." A phrase that had become so common in his house that even the staff whispered it to mock him when he wasn't around, but that night, while the guests forced polite laughter, one person listened differently, and it was Clara, the maid, who stood silently in the corner, her simple uniform pressed, her hands carrying trays, her eyes filled not with fear but with quiet wisdom, because Clara had seen life in ways Raymond could never imagine, having grown up in poverty, having lost her parents to illness, having raised her siblings alone with nothing but faith and hard work, and though she was now serving in a rich man's house, her spirit remained unshaken, her dignity intact, and her heart filled with compassion that often went unnoticed, until destiny gave her the moment to speak. When Raymond began mocking one of his investors who dared to suggest a different strategy, he banged the table with his fist and roared, "You don't tell me what to do. No one shuts me up." And the entire hall went silent except for the nervous clinking of cutlery, yet in that silence came the softest sound. Clara accidentally dropped a glass as she overheard his arrogance, and the glass shattered across the polished floor. All eyes turned to her, and Raymond's face burned red with anger. "You clumsy fool," he thundered. "Do you know how much that glass costs? Do you know who you are serving? Speak. Or are you